Welcome to the self-intimacy journey, a space to transform heartbreak into ecstasy, a space to fall deeply in love with yourself and embrace a level of self-intimacy you've never known before. Alas, allow yourself to dance with your demons and fully accept all of you. Your host, Charlene, the Intimacy Maven. Welcome to the self-intimacy journey. I am here again with Mark, and we are continuing on our journey to financial literacy. And today we will be discussing wealth building. In the last episode, we discussed debt and your credit rating. And today is wealth building. So buckle up and let's do this. So, Mark, what is important to know about building wealth?
Investing builds wealth through the power of compound interest. Let's say you invested $1,000 for a year and got 10% or $100 in returns and have a balance of $1,100. For the second year, you would add another 1,000 and get returns on both first year and second year contributions, plus a return on the 100 you earned from the first year. With a 10% return, you would then have $2,310 on your $2,000 in contributions. After perhaps 8 years of consistent 10% annual returns, the return on the previous contributions will rival the $1,000 new contribution in size. For 6% consistent annual returns, it takes 12 years for the previous balance return to rival the new $1,000 contribution. That is like getting a 1-year bonus contribution every 8 to 12 years. Over long periods of time, like a 40-year working career, a sustained savings program with solid investment returns can grow truly dramatic amounts. You may remember from our first episode that growing million-dollar amounts takes relatively low amounts of consistent monthly contributions, thanks to the phenomenon of compound interest. One way to understand the power of compounding is to look at doubling your money. An investment of $1,000 at a 10% annual return will double in value in 7.2 years. But at an 8% return, it will take 9 years to double. You may have noticed that in both examples, if you multiply the annual return by the doubling time, you get 72. That's called the rule of 72, which tells you that dividing the interest rate into 72 gives you the doubling time.
Okay, and what does compound interest mean to retirement savings?
Well, let's look at investment doubling in the context of retirement saving. If your investment doubles in value every 7.2 years, they can double 6 times in 43.2 years. That means $1,000 you invest at 22 years of age will grow to be $64,000 at 65 years of age. If you invest $1,000 at age 30, then it will grow to nearly $32,000 at 65. That shows the importance of starting to invest at a young age and consistently investing over your working years. Conversely, if you wait to start saving for retirement until your children are adults, it will be much more difficult to accumulate large amounts with only 10 to 15 years left and having only 4 times your first year of investment at 50 as a foundation.
Okay, tell us about other factors affecting wealth building.
Inflation and taxes are two more factors affecting wealth building. Inflation erodes the purchasing power of your investments. If you are saving with a retirement goal of accumulating 12 years of your pre-retirement income to maintain your lifestyle, then recognizing the growth in that amount due to inflation is important. The Federal Reserve attempts to control inflation through interest rates on certain funds and other tools that affect the money supply. The Fed's goal is to achieve annual inflation of 2%. Using the rule of 72 here means that your purchasing power is cut in half every 36 years at 2%. That means you need to get good real returns or after inflation returns that are several points above the inflation rate.
What about taxes?
Managing taxes is another critical aspect of building wealth. If you found coupons to save 15%, 20%, or more for things that you were going to buy, wouldn't you go out of your way to claim every one of those? That is essentially what you do when deferring or avoiding taxes, and there are several ways to do that that are perfectly legal. First, it is important to understand there are several kinds of tax that affect wealth building. Ordinary income taxes are charged on interest and short-term capital gains, generally investments that are sold after less than 1 year of acquiring them. In our example of saving $1,000 each year with a 10% return, we ignored income taxes in our calculations. If an investor earns taxable interest and has a marginal tax rate of 22%, then the $100 in earnings turns into only $78 after taxes. The doubling time grows from 7.2 years to 9.2 years after taxes. The investment at age 22 that formerly grew to $64,000 at retirement now only grows to $24,000. While stocks pay dividends that are taxed in the year paid, an increase in the stock value isn't taxed until it is sold. Tax rates vary with the amount of income earned. The federal government and state government charge income taxes, though some states don't charge income taxes. Typically, there are tax tables with increasing rates that apply to higher levels or brackets of income. The marginal tax rate is the rate applied to your highest income amount, and it quantifies the effect of tax on the added income. That is more relevant than your average tax rate, which is the amount of total tax divided by your income. That will be a lower rate, but doesn't accurately reflect the incremental taxes charged on additional income. You can estimate your marginal tax rate for the current year by doing an estimate of your income taxes. One way is to use free income tax tools offered at the IRS.gov website for a simple hypothetical federal tax return for the current year. In 2024, the federal income tax rates start at 10% and increase to 12, then to 15%, then 22, then 24, then 32, then 35, and finally 37% for the highest incomes. These rates apply to amounts you earned net of various deductions, including standard deductions of $15,000 for singles and $30,000 for married couples in 2024. Note that these rates and deductions change quite often, so look up current information on the internet or in free tax software through the IRS. Check your state tax rates too if you live in a state that charges income taxes.
What about tax? What other tax is there beside ordinary income tax?
Capital gains taxes are imposed on profits from the sale of assets that appreciate in value, like stocks and real estate. If the asset is held for more than a year, it generally becomes a long-term capital gain and has a specific, usually lower tax rate. Capital gains tax rates vary with your income. There are no capital gains taxes on incomes up to $48,350 for individuals in 2025 and $96,700 for couples. A 15% rate applies to most incomes after that, up to $533,400 for singles or $600,050 for couples, and then 20% above those incomes. Note that an asset can increase in value year after year with no obligation until the investor finally decides to sell it. That is one aspect of how company founders can accumulate great wealth and pay low taxes. Investing in stocks of companies that are good, stable investments to hold for the very long term allows investors to build wealth and defer the taxes to allow that portion of their investments to continue growing. That is one reason why stocks and real estate are popular as wealth building investments.
What are some good ways to invest for retirement?
The federal government created powerful special programs to encourage us to save for retirement more effectively by deferring or even eliminating income tax burdens. There are several programs, including individual retirement accounts, IRAs, employer-sponsored 401ks and 403bs, pension programs, annuities, whole life insurance, health savings accounts, and various employee stock or options programs. In many of these programs, the individual's contribution may be exempted from the current year income taxes, as well as interest, dividends, or appreciated value, but taxes will be imposed on the amounts as they are withdrawn from the accounts in retirement. And of course, it could be earlier if you withdrew them prematurely. These features make it easier for people to part with savings since they get upfront tax relief on the contributions, plus their investments grow without any burden of taxation until withdrawal. That means investments that pay interest or dividends avoid taxes until they're finally withdrawn, much like capital gains tax treatment. One catch is that investors can't withdraw these funds before 59 and a half years of age without a 10% penalty and have to pay the income tax. Another is that there will be ordinary income taxation on the gains in stocks held inside your retirement accounts when you finally withdraw the funds to spend. The government gives you another choice to complicate things. Suppose you opt to pay the taxes on the income you contribute to your retirement program in the year you earn it, but never have to pay a tax on the profits, interests, or dividends down the road if you wait until 59 and a half years or later to withdraw it. In our example of a 22-year-old investing $1,000 that was taxed, it would grow to $64,000 that would not be taxed at withdrawal. If that 22-year-old was in a low tax bracket, like 10 or 12%, and became a 65-year-old with a 24% tax rate, that is an even bigger benefit to not get taxed on the mature amount at that age. That is how Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks work. There are even ways to convert standard IRAs to Roths and pay the taxes now, but not when you withdraw it. Think of the Roth alternative as being taxed on the seed instead of the harvest, to use a farm analogy. Many employers in medium and large businesses offer 401k retirement plans. You can sign up for them and pay yourself first by payroll deduction to the account. A wonderful feature of most accounts is employer contributions. This benefit varies, but many contribute 50% of the employee's contribution up to some limit. Most programs have a vesting schedule such that if you leave the employer, the result is losing a decreasing percentage of your employer contribution until leaving at the end of the investment period. 5 years is a common period. Having your savings start off with a base return of 50% plus whatever the investment and the contribution earn provides a huge boost to your savings if you stay with your employer until full vesting. If you have the option of investing in your employer's 401k program with employer matching contributions, that is typically your best option for retirement saving, and there are typically high saving limits. Depending on your earnings, you and or your spouse may also be able to contribute to an IRA. When you leave an employer, you might find an advantage in rolling over the 401k balance from your employer to your own IRA account and perhaps pay lower fees than leaving it in place or rolling it over to your new employer's plan. If you withdraw the funds, you will pay the deferred income taxes if it wasn't a Roth account. Plus, you'll have to pay a 10% penalty if withdrawing before you turn 59 and a half. So the rollover is the best plan to have.
Okay, regarding that, if you most of them, they have a managed system, meaning that they will manage the account for you, right? So if you can you discuss a little bit about a managed account and you managing your account? Like if you know the stock market, you can do it, but if you do not, it's best if you have it managed by an organization and they will just take a fee. Can you touch on that a little bit if you do know?
Well, in the next podcast, we're going to talk more about just where to put those investments.
Okay.
You're right. You can put those in various kinds of funds that have managers that pick stocks or indexes that are automatically going to certain stocks. Or you can use investment managers to pick investments that are consistent with your goals, and they'll charge you for doing that work. So many choices. Hopefully, our podcast 6 will give you some great background to do this at very low costs and feel confident about it. But if not, you can also get help from these other professionals, maybe only for a few years while you're studying and watching to see how it works before you decide to tackle self investing.
Wonderful. So, is owning a home a good investment?
For many people, it is the most valuable possession they have, and it can be a great way to build wealth while paying for something to enjoy. Usually, we expect houses to increase in value over time as costs for building new houses increased with inflation. However, if your community's economy suffers and the demand for local housing decreases, that can cause values to drop, even if the national trend in house prices is up. In addition to price appreciation, homeowners build wealth by paying down a portion of the loan balance with each monthly payment. Also, a homeowner has control over making modifications to the home. These features are not typically available in renting. Here is an example of how homeownership can build wealth. Suppose you buy a home for $400,000 and put 5% down. That would be $20,000, with the rest of the money coming from a purchase loan or mortgage. If after 10 years the value increases 25%, then it will be worth $100,000 more than the purchase price. Making 10 years of loan payments on a $380,000 loan will reduce the amount owed by $52,375. You have then built equity of $152,375 on an initial investment of only $20,000 plus the ongoing payments instead of rent while enjoying your home. The effect of magnifying the return on an investment using debt to help fund it is called financial leverage. You could sell the house to use this wealth, but you must pay transaction costs like real estate commission and title company charges. Also, you still need a place to live. If you stay long enough to pay off your mortgage, then living without mortgage payments is another way to benefit from the home's value. Nevertheless, you could buy a smaller house when you retire or live in a less expensive area and have the remaining money to spend. Note that transaction costs for selling a house can be considerable. Commissions and closing costs could be around 10% of the sales price. If you need to move after only 1 year, you might not recover your initial investment unless the price you sell it for is enough to pay those costs plus your initial investment and the loan balance. You should expect to live in a house for a few years or you are better off renting and investing your down payment in something else.
That's a great point. And there are also ways that you can bypass. So I would just mention a name and you can do your research if you're in the market to sell your house. You can look for open door. You have some flexibilities there on how you can save on some of the fees. That's what I used when I sold my house a few years ago. And the next question that I have for you is, so some people are better off renting than buying a house, correct?
Yes, some are. Besides selling cost considerations, a homeowner faces maintenance costs that could be considerable for things like new roofs, air conditioners, painting, plumbing, electrical, flooring, window coverings, and many more. If you rent, those costs are the owner's responsibility. Rent payments are often lower than ownership for people who borrow most of the money to buy a house. You should compare your monthly cost for ownership to renting, including the maintenance cost, expected appreciation and value of the house, and the effect of loan payments on the reduction of the loan balance. There are places where house prices lead to payments much higher than rent, although you can still have rent price increases that are a bigger impact than ownership cost increases from insurance or property tax. With ownership, you have added benefits of control over when to move, making improvements, and lowering your costs at times when interest rates are reduced by refinancing your previous loan. There's a lot to consider in the financial comparison, but for many people, the idea of having more control and building equity may be the biggest factors favoring ownership.
Are there income tax advantages to home ownership?
Oh, yes. Not only are taxes on capital gains in the value of the real estate deferred until a sale, but there are also exemptions you might qualify for and pay no tax on the profits for selling your personal residence. The exemptions are currently limited to $250,000 in profits for a single person and $500,000 for a couple. And there are criteria such as on length of residence and personal use of the property. Another possible area of tax advantage is for those who itemize deductions on your returns. The interest paid on loans used to purchase a home and the property tax payments can be deductible. The standard deduction was raised quite a bit in 2017, but is scheduled to change after 2025. You should check with an accountant to see if you will reduce your taxes from buying a home. This could be another advantage of owning over renting, especially if standard deductions are reduced in the future.
Does investment real estate have even more tax advantages?
Yes, owners can deduct costs that you can't on your personal residence, such as maintenance, cleaning, advertising, association fees, insurance, professional and management fees, and utilities. Even more attractive is depreciation, a non-cash expense to reflect the wearing out of a property, even though you still deduct repairs and maintenance costs. With depreciation, an owner's taxable rental income will be reduced, and sometimes to zero with sufficient interest and other expenses. Many investors grow their wealth through leveraged investment real estate. Now that we have discussed general investment program and topics, in our next episode, we will talk about specific investment types, including risks and other factors.
Oh, can't wait for that one. Okay, so the next phase, we will talk about homework. Have you been doing your homework? Have you been doing your research? Have you been putting what you are learning into practice? It's important if you want to go from point A to point B. Make sure that you do. And as we enter the new year, if you have not, go back and do the homework before you start on this one. So, Mark, if you can walk us through the homework.
Sure. The first one is to estimate your taxable income, your income tax amount, and your marginal tax rate for this year. And compare these figures to the previous year, which you can get off of your last year's tax returns. Will your withholdings create a large refund that you could start to reduce via withholding changes now and divert those funds into retirement accounts? That is good to know. The second one is to find out if you or your partner's employer offer a 401k retirement savings program if you aren't already participating in it. Determine the maximum amount of employer contributions you are eligible to receive, the vesting schedule for keeping them, and the maximum contributions you can make. How much more will you make on contributions with a full employer match this year than on other accounts you are already funding or saving into? Review your budget and decide if you can at least afford to save enough to maximize your employer's contribution, if not more. The third exercise, determine how much you can contribute to individual retirement accounts, taking into account your 401k eligibility. You may need help from an accountant if you can't determine this from your own internet research or want the greater surety of the professional input. Reevaluate your budget as in the first exercise, especially if you don't have access to 401k programs. Number 4, if you don't already own a home, do internet research to see if you could be eligible for a special first-time buyer program in your area, which would have low down payments. If you are a veteran, you may be eligible for a zero-down loan program through the Veterans Administration. You could explore this through realtors or home lenders. Have a realtor or lender help you determine your ownership costs and compare them to your rent, and develop a plan for homeownership if that looks attractive.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. This was very helpful. Do you have any words of wisdom that you would like to share with us in closing?
Yeah, I mean, certainly these are not get-rich-quick schemes. These take patience and consistency, but you can certainly build large amounts of wealth if you just do this in small amounts at a time, consistently and effectively, and use these retirement programs to take advantage of the incredible tax deferral or even avoidance in the case of Roths that are offered. There's lots of opportunities. We're going to explore what those opportunities can be in the next session. But these are tools that really can change your life and your future.
Thank you. Like they say, you have to trust the process, and just be patient and keep on going. Thank you so much, Mike. So thank you guys for listening. Until we meet again, have yourself a wonderful day. Bye. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could share it, leave a review, and rate it. It means so much and it helps spread this message further.